Their conversation stretched longer than either expected. Time, it seemed, had folded itself around them, leaving only the comfort of voices and shared glances. Emma hadn't laughed this freely in months. Daniel, for his part, couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken to him without mentioning contracts, meetings, or money. When Emma leaned back with a sigh, she admitted softly, "It feels strange, talking like this. Usually, people don't see me. They just see the clothes, the fact that I work 2 jobs, and they decide I'm not worth knowing." Daniel's expression grew firm, his voice gentle but steady. "Those people don't know what they're missing." The words settled into Emma's chest like warmth spreading through cold hands. For the first time, she felt seen. Then, just as she was about to thank him, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and her face paled. It was her landlord's number. She silenced it quickly, hoping he hadn't noticed. But Daniel had. "Trouble?" he asked softly. Emma forced a smile. "Just life. Rent's due, and I'm late again. But that's not your problem." Daniel studied her carefully, the CEO in him noticing what she tried to hide, the tired lines under her eyes, the way her sweater sleeves were fraying. She was struggling far more than she admitted. And yet, there was no bitterness in her tone. No envy. Only quiet resilience. That stirred something in Daniel's heart. He had met countless people who pretended to care about him for what he had. But Emma? She was sitting here, admitting she had nothing to offer, and somehow, she was giving him more than anyone else ever had. Daniel realized then, this blind date wasn't a chance encounter. It was fate knocking at his door. The cafe had long emptied, but neither Daniel nor Emma seemed ready to leave. At last, Daniel checked his watch and sighed. "I should go. I promised my son I'd be home before bedtime." Emma's eyes lit with curiosity. "What's his name?" "Ethan," Daniel said with a proud smile. "He's 5. Wild imagination, endless questions. Sometimes I think he's teaching me more than I teach him." Emma chuckled softly. "He sounds wonderful." Something in her voice carried a wistfulness Daniel couldn't ignore. "Do you like kids?" he asked. Her gaze softened. "I love them. I actually volunteer at the library once a week, reading to children. It's the one place where life feels light again." That answer caught Daniel off guard. Most people he dated grew uneasy when he mentioned being a father. But Emma leaned closer, her eyes shining, as though the thought of children only warmed her heart. When they finally stepped outside, the night air was cool. Daniel walked her toward the bus stop, though something inside him wished she'd never have to take another late bus again. As they stood there, Emma bit her lip nervously. "Thank you for today. I know it wasn't much, just coffee, but it meant more than you realize." Daniel smiled, slipping his hands in his pockets. "Emma, sometimes the smallest moments mean the most." As the bus pulled up, Daniel hesitated, then said, "Maybe you should meet Ethan sometime. He'd love you." Emma froze, startled by the invitation. No one had ever invited her into something so personal, so real. And though her heart raced with doubt, a quiet warmth told her that perhaps, for the first time, she truly belonged somewhere. The following Saturday, Emma stood nervously outside Daniel's townhouse, clutching the straps of her worn handbag. She'd almost canceled twice that morning, convinced she didn't belong in his world. But when the door swung open, all her doubts were silenced by the sight of a little boy with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy, is this the lady?" Ethan blurted out, tugging at Daniel's sleeve. Emma laughed despite her nerves. "I suppose I am," she said gently, kneeling to meet him at eye level. "And you must be Ethan." The boy grinned. "I made cookies. Want one?" Daniel chuckled. He insisted. Within minutes, Emma found herself sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, listening as Ethan animatedly described his toy dinosaurs. To her surprise, he climbed into her lap halfway through, as though he'd known her forever. Daniel stood at the doorway, watching the scene unfold. He hadn't seen Ethan warm up to anyone this quickly, not even family friends. There was something natural, almost effortless, about the way Emma fit into the rhythm of their little world. Later, while Ethan napped, Daniel offered Emma a cup of tea. She hesitated, glancing around the comfortable home. "I don't understand why you invited me here," she admitted. "I don't have much to give. I'm barely keeping myself together." Daniel met her gaze, steady and sincere. "Emma, you've already given something priceless. My son hasn't smiled like that in a long time. And honestly, either have I." Emma's heart ached. For the first time, she realized this wasn't about wealth or status. It was about connection, pure, human, and real. And in that quiet living room, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Weeks passed, and Emma became a gentle presence in both Daniel and Ethan's lives. She never asked for anything, no gifts, no promises, only gave her time, her laughter, her kindness. She helped Ethan with his reading, listened to Daniel talk about the pressures of leading a company, and shared small pieces of her own life, scars and all. One evening, after dinner, Ethan tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, can Emma stay forever?" The room fell quiet. Emma froze, her heart thundering. Daniel knelt beside his son, brushing his hair back. "Why do you want that, buddy?" Ethan's reply was simple. "Because she makes us smile." Emma's eyes stung with tears. She had spent so long feeling invisible, convinced she had nothing to offer. Yet here was a child, seeing her not for what she lacked, but for what she gave. Daniel looked up at her then, his expression soft but certain. "He's right. Emma, you walked into a coffee shop thinking you had nothing, but you gave us something money can't buy. Warmth. Truth. Love." Emma's lips trembled. "But Daniel, I can't give you the kind of life you're used to." He reached across the table, taking her hand firmly. "I don't want the life I'm used to. I want the life that feels real. And that's with you." The three of them sat together, laughter filling the room, no longer strangers but something closer to family. Emma had once whispered, "I can't afford coffee." But now, sitting with Daniel and Ethan, she realized she had found something far richer. She had found home. And sometimes, life's greatest miracles begin with the simplest smile. Emma sat nervously at the corner of the small cafe, twisting her fingers under the table. It was her first blind date, and she already regretted agreeing to it. When the waiter approached, she shook her head shyly. I can't afford coffee today," she whispered, cheeks burning with embarrassment. Across from her, Daniel, a tall man with kind eyes, studied her silently. He looked nothing like the casual photo her friend had shown her. There was something steady, grounded, almost different about him. Then, without hesitation, he smiled at the waiter and said, "2 coffees, please." Emma's eyes widened. "You don't have to." "I want to," Daniel interrupted gently. "Coffee tastes better when shared." For the first time that day, Emma's lips curved into a small smile. She wasn't used to kindness. Most people looked past her patched sweater and second-hand shoes. But here was this stranger, treating her as if she belonged. As they talked, Emma's guards slowly lowered. She spoke about juggling 2 jobs, about the rent she could barely cover, and the little dream she still kept alive. Daniel listened, truly listened, without judgment, his gaze steady and warm. What she didn't know was that Daniel wasn't just a man with a kind smile. He was a single father, a CEO who'd built an empire from scratch. And in Emma's honesty, he saw something rare, someone who valued truth over pretense. This blind date was about to change both their lives forever. The steam from their coffee cups curled between them like a gentle bridge, softening the silence. Emma cupped her mug carefully, as if it were something precious. She hadn't treated herself to coffee in weeks. It felt like a luxury reserved for another world. Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm. "So tell me, why did you agree to this blind date?" Emma let out a quiet laugh, almost bitter. "Honestly? My friend insisted. She said I needed to remember I was more than my bills and worries." She shrugged. "But truth is, I almost didn't come. I didn't want to sit across from someone who judged me the moment they saw I couldn't even afford coffee." Daniel's smile softened. Then I'm glad you came anyway. For a moment, his gaze drifted, and Emma noticed a shadow pass through his expression. She tilted her head. What about you? Why are you here? He hesitated, then spoke slowly. Because my little boy asked me if I was lonely. He said, Daddy, don't you want someone to smile with you at breakfast? Daniel's voice cracked faintly, and he chuckled, embarrassed. I realized he was right. I've spent so long working, I forgot how to let someone in. Emma blinked, touched by his honesty. You're a father? Yes, Daniel said proudly. 5 years old. He's my whole world. Something shifted inside Emma. She wasn't talking to a stranger anymore. This man wasn't just wealthy or confident. He was human, carrying his own wounds and hopes. And without meaning to, Emma found herself leaning closer, drawn not to the polished image of a man, but to the quiet heart behind it. This was no ordinary blind date. It was the beginning of something neither of them expected.